Thank you. I very much agree with Marie saying that we should try to learn something every day, and I will try to learn you something more than how to make that. Well, perhaps it's a good start at least. To start off, let's see how this works. Plugged in? No? Anyway, what I'm going to do, as you'll see, the talk will be called Do Your Post-Mortem Before You Die. And what I will try to illustrate with that is both to give a much more brutally honest picture of how it truly is to be an entrepreneur. You often, I bet most of you see the glorified pictures in Dagens Industri most of the time, where you have the entrepreneur on the front of the page looking out. Works? Thanks. Most of the time, what you see, or the big one? Yeah, okay, finally. So I'll just start off very, very briefly with what I do. And I'm not going to go into this much, but I think it's good to give you some background. So what we started off with 3.5 years ago was trying to take all this video that's online and allow people to create with it. So what we wanted to do basically was create a video editing tool, but which runs directly in the web browser. So there are no downloads, there are no installs, there are no barriers to start. You can just enter a URL and directly it works. As you will see, we both failed and succeeded with a few different things regarding this. But the business model today is that we license this technology to other companies. So we have companies like Procter & Gamble, like IKEA, like a lot of them, and they pay us to have this within their webpage. So that's a very brief background. What I rather want to do is, as I started off, we all see a story about entrepreneurs, which you see in the media, and a story which you most often hear when you hear someone like me talking. It's basically this story. Perhaps this story. I hope. Okay, not how it was supposed. Yeah. Basically, I'm not showing this out of hybris at all, but this is what we what we always saw regarding ourselves for, well, 2-3 years. And this is the story that we'll see regarding most entrepreneurs. It's the flashy pictures with a few people on a mission to change the world. And you start with an idea. Obviously, this idea seems brilliant when when you read about it. And then you read the article and it tells about how people executed this idea. And it usually ends with, okay, now this company is profitable and great, or it was sold to Google, or whatever. Often with a picture of the entrepreneur looking out towards the horizon there. But what I'm going to tell you is first this story, how it would look from our point of view. We started off in 2006. The first thing we did was to I'm having serious trouble with this one. Okay, let's try again. In January in 2006, and this is what we would read in the magazine. In January in 2006, this young team of students starting developing this new editing tool that would change the world. We saw the future. We knew what would happen. Moving on from that, yay. After developing this, struggling for a year, we finally launched it. And we got massive press coverage and everyone used it. It was already a success. It's a delay, okay. See if I can. Okay, I'll do it manually after a while. We founded a company in February, and then we're a few brilliant people. I was 20 years at the time. It was always featured as, okay, this 20-year-old now is founding a company based on this brilliant idea. Based on that, we took in an angel round of funding. Now JayCut is bringing in the money to accelerate. We changed the business model to business from being a consumer company. And then it was often portrayed as we are developing with the market, seeing the opportunities, and we are really getting ready to grab them. And finally, we started signing major customers like Procter & Gamble, etc. And then the business model is a success. We've proven it. This is what you would read in media. The true story is much more like, or true, I'm not going to say this is untrue, but it's slightly polished. Rather, okay, we don't know if this will be popular, but come on, let's try it. It seems like a really fun thing to try to do, and we had some experience with it before. Secondly, okay, we started off with a first business model. This obviously did not work. Okay, let's try to launch this to consumers instead. Secondly, we thought ourselves, whoa, we got lots of press coverage. We must be awesome. Don't believe your own hype. We had difficulties raising capital, and therefore we hopefully took in an angel round. Okay, thanks. I'm really not getting anyone of this to work. Yeah, and therefore, since we had some difficulties taking in the venture capital for reasons which I will explain, and totally justified to be honest, then we started looking at angel capital instead. Moving on from that, the CEO at the company at that time moved on to do different things. And a young, naive, and totally unexperienced 21-year-old instead took over as CEO, and that was me. We changed the business model again, since it didn't work. We much lived on the hype. Okay, so it's so sexy to run a community, we should do it as well. After realizing that, okay, it may be sexy, but it's almost completely impossible to monetize a community as well. It took Facebook, 250 million users to become profitable? Yeah. We started really fighting for survival, and then we were already considered a success. And after that, we started improving. We found a correct business model. And we lost core competency. We lost some of the best people in the team. And okay, there is certainly some delay. And finally, hire and fire. I made some bad decisions when it comes to recruiting as well. And I will tell you some about those experiences. But what I want to show you is that, okay, you saw the press clips. I don't know how many we've had by now, but it's so much we don't even care anymore. And they tell a story. But if you focus too much on this story that the press will tell you, you will start to believe that that's the way you run a company, I think. And that's very, very dangerous. Because as I try to portray, the reality is very different. And the reality is full of all these hurdles and changes and difficulties, which become totally erased when you read in the media. Based on this, I will bring up a few mistakes. And I will now start with the first mistake, which is the unimportance of press. We, as I saw, had quite a lot. And when we started having all these press, we thought, okay, we can't fail with making this a success. I mean, we've been on well, not necessarily the front page, but been in at least every major magazine in Sweden. How can this not succeed? And what we started noting after a while is, I'll bring into that into the second point as well, but you always overestimate the importance of press. You believe that more people will know about you. You believe that more customers will come to you. You believe that this will be a thing that will last for a month, not just 2 days. But it's not at all true. You always overestimate the importance of press. So what I want to communicate here is, press is great. I'm not saying it's bad, but don't spend too much resources on it, because what you believe you can extract from it is less than you think. The second thing is that you don't believe your own hype. And that's quite dangerous. You certainly run the risk of becoming self-blind, because all of these things will be written about you and your company that, I'm not saying anything that it's not true, but it's always polished. And reading all these polished reviews of you, you can come to start to believe that your company actually is all that the press writes, instead of knowing that your company is what you work with and see every day. They will portray you as being more successful than what's happening at the time often. So don't believe your own hype. Don't venture up in the clouds and don't believe that you yourself as a person is as great as they write. You're nothing more than human. The second mistake, the difficulties in attracting venture capital. I think the very basis when you go out or when you start a business at all, which all of you know as SSES students, is that you have to understand how to capitalize your ID technology. And we certainly tried to do this, but we had more of a lack of understanding for how to run a community in large, but also how to monetize a community. To be honest, it wasn't just us. You all read about community hype when Facebook started expanding. MySpace was sold for a bunch of million dollars, and YouTube was sold for $1.65 billion, if I recall. There was a huge hype regarding this. So everyone wanted to start a community, and the belief was, if we can build a big enough user base, we will sell this company for a great valuation, or we will at least be able to monetize it, or we hope we will. The almighty answer all the time was ads. We will just put a few ads on our page and that will bring success. As we said before, it took Facebook up to 250 million registered users to be able to become profitable. This is a bit of a meta discussion, but in general, I don't think you should base an internet business model on advertising. It may be a backup, it may be an alternative revenue, but it should not be your main revenue. That's my belief. Anyway, we had a lack of truly understanding how to monetize this. We and the whole industry had a lack of understanding how to monetize a community. And that obviously shone through. So I'm not surprised as of now that we reverted to angel funding instead. And reverting to angel funding was not optimal. Would have given less capital than we would have required at the moment, but it was necessary, and in hindsight it was good. So in general I can say I'm very positive to all of this whole ecosystem, regardless of what you hear. But understand how to capitalize your business and never underestimate it. Don't just show a hockey stick. It's often said that showing how to become profitable in a tech venture is just another genre of science fiction. And there is some truth in that. Secondly, and let me apologize for this slide before I even show it to you. Try to show it to you. Hopefully showing it to you soon. Okay, perhaps. Okay, fair enough. What I'm going to do is show you the three business models that we've been working on and briefly understand why things didn't work, I believe, and why we decided to move on. And there's a lot of text in this slide. So to start off, our first sketch was to be a business-consumer company where we would make revenue by people uploading media from their cell phones using premium SMS, or premium MMS in that case. We quickly noticed that, okay, the pros were there. It was a promise at a quickly developing market. I mean, we've had the mobile industry have been a promised land for 4 years now, perhaps probably will for the coming 4 years as well. We're still waiting. Promise of a rapidly growing market and that customers would directly pay for services. I mean, it's much more tangible than advertising, in my sense. The issues that we noted was a very fragmented market. You have a lot of handsets, you have difficulties uploading, you have to have lots of different applications to support upload. Or premium MMS is better, but there we had hardware limitations. Basically, you couldn't upload anything larger than 300 kilobytes. That's not a big movie. Secondly, from that we moved on to, well, as you probably most of you have seen if you read about the company, starting the community and becoming a business consumer company. Well, we were a business consumer company, but and you've heard most of this, so I won't go into that much depth. But basically, it was a very hyped market at that time. If you ran a community and got user base, you would be successful. And we had a very strategic positioning, we thought, since we could either be the YouTube but with video editing, which we saw as a huge benefit, or we could be just a video editing community which was totally open to YouTube and therefore not even competing, which was with what was to become the biggest player. So we tried to say that instead of becoming a competitor to this vastly expanding video landscape, we would try to become, I totally lost it. We wouldn't compete, we would complete them. Complement, rather. Low margins, advertising is hard. Secondly, which we're now on and which we've proven working, is to license this to businesses. Basically, you pay us for using the technology. That was a mistake, and I think what I primarily want to communicate here in one sentence is that when you at first start to look at a business model, be prepared that the market develops, you develop, your product develops, and you also have to innovate regarding the business model. You have to develop the business model. Secondly, perhaps, misunderstanding the CEO role. As you saw in our timeline, the previous CEO before me, I was with and founded a company, but the previous CEO moved on to pursue a different career, and there I was suddenly, 21 years old, never run a company, run a few projects, nothing big special, certainly very naive. And I was asked to run this company. And that helped me a lot. I learned a lot of things. And I think the most important thing, which I want to bring up here, is that I totally misunderstood the very fundamental of what it was to take on a CEO role when I started. And I basically tried to sit there in the beginning with all the answers. I saw the CEO as the guy who should be the smartest guy in the room, to quote Enron, which is perhaps not very good, but I saw the CEO as the guy who should be the smartest guy in the room, should be the one coming there with the answers, and be the one who had a solution to every problem. What I realized after time was that that was very, very far from what I've so far found to be the most successful approach, which is rather don't come in there with answers. Your goal is much more to be a moderator. You have a team of great people, or you should have a team of great people. It's your role to build it. But these people, if they're recruited right, should know everything which you don't know. You should know where to get us. You should have a vision. You should see the long-term goals. But you shouldn't be able to say how we should exactly scale the technology in order to get there. So rather, instead of trying to have all the answers, be very focused on communicating the vision all the time. Don't try to be the smartest guy in the room. Rather, be a visionary moderator instead of a dictator with all the answers that says this is the way it should be. So often when I'm in meetings, I find that I spend 70% of my time asking questions. Often. And as far as I know, the traditional picture of a meeting with a CEO is the other way around. What should we do now? Instead, it's me asking, okay, I want to get there. What should we do now? Don't try to have all the answers. And finally, perhaps finally, very short one. Your first 10 people is extremely critical. You can't afford not to be picky with your hires. You need people that don't only have the skill, you need people that would truly fit into this culture. Because if you run a 1,000-people company with a very structured development plan, you can probably afford to just focus on having the skilled developers. But in this case, I value spirit and passion 10 times above actual skill. You still need great people, but if you have the people that believes in your vision and that has this sort of fundamental flame in them, they will learn what they need to know, subject to having the basis, of course. So I don't go out there and say, I need a C++ programmer who has experience from Ruby on Rails and scaling databases. Rather, I go out there and say, if I can find a developer that truly believes in the vision I have, and you have a good basic knowledge of developing, very good and preferably advanced, but I don't care if you know C++ or PHP, as long as you can evolve with us and with the company and are willing to learn, then I think you're much more fit than a guy who's an expert in C++, but don't have the passion. And be very picky. You have to be picky and trust your gut feeling. Gut feeling goes for a lot of things within entrepreneurship, and I believe gut feeling is just the very purest distillate of experience in that sense. Sort of subconscious feeling which allows you to make decisions quick or make realizations which you don't have otherwise. But trust your gut feeling when it comes to people. Final conclusions. Don't be afraid to fail. You as a person will fail. I'm happy if I succeed with 70% of what I do every day. If only 1/3 of all my decisions are wrong, then I'm happy. Because you have to make decisions faster, on less information, and execute faster than you normally have to do if you can spend 3 months analyzing something within Ericsson. You make decisions faster, and therefore you will fail. Don't be afraid to fail. It's completely natural. Secondly, not only you as a person, you shouldn't be afraid to fail, but also you have to instill that culture in the company as a whole. Because if your company is afraid to fail, if all your employees are afraid to fail, then they will not try enough new things, which will hinder your development in general. They will not take the initiatives, which often can be risky. And most importantly, as soon as you hit an obstacle, which you will do, as we've shown, then people will start to take cover. And that's risky in the business. And finally, have colleagues that truly speaks their mind. You won't be able to find all the flaws in your company. There will be a lot of flaws. So you have to work with colleagues that are not afraid to say that, hey, Jonas, this ain't working at all. Or, Jonas, you have thought completely wrong when it comes to this strategy. Or at least force me to argue regarding it. Don't have people who just take a place on a bandwagon and then you start to go. Have people that can always question you and aren't afraid to bring up the possible mistakes that you face. Just to round off, you've seen all our mistakes now. We've also been fortunate to do a few good things along the way. We are very proud of our awards. I think primarily the one from Google for outstanding innovation and a few others. We became nominated to, or rather won, one of the top 100 tech companies in Europe in 2009. And then now in 2010, one of the 200 top tech companies globally. Last year, we did a lot of things, if I can show them. We tripled our revenue in 2009. We're profitable, 7 employees. We took in more new customers in the past 3 months than we did in all of the past year. And we are expanding. So if you know any developers matching their passion criteria, please tell me. But what I want to illustrate here is that this is not to brag. I want to say that we have made so many mistakes. I've not even began to show all of them. But what we have done well is rather like I think that was in a Rocky movie. The winners are not defined by who can hit the hardest. It's by who can take the hardest punch and still stand up again. And I think that's very true for entrepreneurship. You will have problem, but what defines you as a good entrepreneur and what defines a good company, often a successful company, is being able to still continue regardless of all these hurdles. So I could see me quote Nietzsche in this. I wish all the aspiring entrepreneurs in this room some very, very big mistakes and some very, very big problems. So that's all for me. Thank you.